We are still, we're probably in module 19. I don't remember the number that we are in. I will look that up and let you know. But you are in the quadratic formula era of this particular 9-week session. Standard form's still always going to be a thing. Any of these already in standard form?
Yes.
Number 5 is, right? C squared, then you have a C, and then you have your constant. How can I get number 3 in standard form? Okay. What? Add 25 to both sides. What's your A when you add 25 to both sides? 1. What's your B when you add 25 to both sides? What?
0.
0. What's your C? 25. Sometimes you won't have a nice middle degree. Bless you. What do we have to do here to make this one standard form, Austin? Add 4n and add 3. When you do that, did you get a 4/3 A? A equals 4/3. B equals 4 and C equals 3. Perfect. So do we have any questions about getting that standard form, finding that A, that B, that C? Because today, all 3 are going to be important. So the quadratic formula is right here. This little guy, can you all see that? I'd like you to write that. X equals, and in the numerator, you've got the opposite of B, so negative B, or negative 1 times B, plus minus sign just came back to us. We learned that when we're talking about sets that had opposite roots, difference of squares primarily. We have that plus minus. Square root of, all underneath the square root symbol, is a b squared minus a 4 times an a times a c. We call that b squared minus 4ac. Very shortcut, but you multiply a times c and negative 4. Negative 4 there is part of the equation. That's not optional. It's minus 4 times a times c. And then we're going to divide the entire numerator from the negative b all the way to the c, everything, by 2 times a. By 2 times a. So that's what we call the quadratic formula. Your quadratic formula works 100% of the time if you know what you're doing. Whether it's a factorable problem, a graphable problem, or a formula, they're all going to get you the same answer. Some you can't do certain methods, so we'll talk about that later. But this plus minus sign is, remember we always say we have 2 roots. One comes from the plus part of this equation, and one comes from the minus part of this equation. So when you have the quadratic formula, you write it together as a plus minus, and then to find each one of your roots, you break it into your plus part, your minus part. And that's how you find the roots of your quadratic equation. If you are really, really good at this, you will be able to use the formula 100%. It works. I wouldn't use it all the time because it's a little too lengthy, but sometimes it will work. Gabe, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. There is no such thing as a plus minus button on your calculator when you go to do this, because I have some people go, oh, let me find the button. There is none. This is just a symbol that shows you have an addition and a subtraction. So you have to take the root and add or subtract it. Quadratic, I think I already talked to you, talks about squares. Second degree means quadratus in Latin, right there. Quadratus meant square to the second power. So now let's get going. We're going to focus on one little part of this guy today, and it's called the discriminant. The discriminant is the expression that's underneath the radical sign. That little check mark is a radical sign that a computer gives you. Just so you know that, that's not a check mark, it's a square root. It just, on the computer, it doesn't do the root part. It just gives you the check mark part. So, the discriminant is what we're going to talk about real quick. And when I say real quick, I think most of you will catch on to this very quickly. Expression under the square root symbol, the b squared minus 4ac. We will not focus on the square root part today. We're just gonna focus on taking the square root of it, I should say. We're gonna focus on finding that value, b squared minus 4ac. When you plug in your a, your b, and your c, and you do your magic, you will come up with a value. That value is going to help us decide if we need to continue or not. It's going to tell us how many roots we have. Doesn't tell us what they are. It'll give us a value to determine how many we have. So make sure you're very clear. This number that you're going to find today, b squared minus 4ac, is a value that determines the number of roots. Because remember, you will always have two, but sometimes they're not real. So we don't know that yet. So we may have no real roots today. Sometimes you get a value that has, it tells you have one. Remember, that's a double root. When you see it on a graph or when you factor it, you have the same factors twice. So sometimes you will have one real root. It's really a double root. You will always have two. Sometimes they're the same. And then sometimes you will have two unique roots, whether they're positive, whether they're negative, whether it's zero, whether it's between estimated. This will tell you that. If the value you have is positive, so you take b squared minus 4ac, enter, and you get 47. That means you have two real roots. You don't know what they are, but it will mean that you have two. For some of you, this will not jump on your paper. I know, even if it is Monday, it's not going to jump on your paper. So make sure you have it down. Sometimes you get zero. B squared minus 4 times A times C is going to equal 0. And if that's the case, you have 1. That's an example of what a double root will be. And then the last thing that's only possible and left is negative. If you have a negative, b squared minus 4ac is a negative value. Well, that tells us that it's not going to cross on a graph through the x-axis. And for right now, for your purposes, there is no solution. There's no real root. It's the empty set. Now, when you get to Algebra 2, you will learn what those roots are. But for us today, there is no solution. So the discriminant, nice big word for today. The value underneath the radical sign, we call that a radical sign, another vocab. B squared minus 4 times A times C. It's going to give you a value. That value can range from positive, 0, or negative. And we will decide based on how positive, negative, or 0 it is. Does it have 2 answers, 1 answer, one double answer, or no answers? And that's your job today. Here's an example. So always, again, make sure you are in standard form. So the example we're going to use here, 4x squared minus 2x plus 14 equals 0. Again, you're going to see the equal 0 because you are solving. We're just doing part of it today. We'll finish it up tomorrow. Today, we're just going to look to see, do we even have to solve it? So 4x squared minus 2x plus 14 is going to equal 0. Once you equal 0, what's your C here? 14, what's A? 4, so B has to be negative 2. Thank you for not saying x's or x squareds. Those are just variables. Those are not values of A, B, and C. First thing you want to do is you want to substitute in what it is that we are looking for in our problem. So our equation says we have b squared, not opposite of b today, b squared. So b is negative 2. I'm going to substitute it in. Make sure you have parentheses around that. If you don't have parentheses, you will never get the right answer for this particular question. So make sure you have parentheses. Minus 4 is part of the expression, the formula you need to use. Times A, I always just put parentheses in. You can put the little star button or the multiply sign. I just use parentheses. 4 is what A is, and then C is 14. From parenthesis open to the last parenthesis close, hit enter. Don't shout out your answer. Beginning to end. And yes, I do want to see what you substitute in here. I do want that written down because I don't know what you did if you made a mistake. And the one you're gonna ask me on is the one you make a mistake on. And then you have no work, and I have nothing to give back to you. So I need to see what you're doing in order to understand how I can help you better. So make sure you're showing work. -2 squared -4, again, parentheses have to be around the -2. If you don't have that, it's gonna give you a wrong answer. Was your answer positive? No? Negative?
Yeah.
Not 0. Okay. Was it 3 digits? Cause that looks like it might be 3 digits. Okay, just based on the scalping of the numbers here. Oh wait, no, that was just substitution, don't worry about that. Let's go there, -220? That is the value. Because it's negative, how many solutions do we have? None. So you would write -220, comma, no solution, or empty set symbol. No roots is what you would say. No roots for today. You don't have any. So your job is to use the formula, get comfortable with that part of it. Once you get that, I think that's the hardest part of the whole equation, and we'll talk about the equation tomorrow, unless you get done super quickly right now. We'll do one more example so that you can see. But other than that, that is the extent of it. After what we've gone through with graphing, hopefully this will be easy for you. Please don't write this down. But what this is showing you the discriminant of this is -16. We just said that negative numbers have no roots, so it's an example of a graph that will not go through the x-axis. They do not have x-intercepts, which means they don't have roots. Here's an example when if you plug in your b squared minus 4ac discriminant, you get a value of 0. 0 is where we touch the x-axis once. It has one root, one x-intercept, one solution, or 1 0, depending on what word they're using at the time. In this equation, the discriminant was 33. 33 is positive. You have 2 distinct roots because it's going to cross the x-axis twice. Whether it's rising or whether it's falling, but if your discriminant is positive, it will cross twice. 2 intercepts, which means 2 solutions. And that's not what you want to do today. You don't want to know what they are. You just want to know how many there are and the value. That is your goal. So, let's just do number 1. If you can get number 1 correct, then we're done. If we're not, we have number 2 there. So don't shout out your answer. See what you can do. Your formula, b squared minus 4 times a times c. If you have it written down at the top of your paper, that would be great. Then you don't have to remember it and remember it and remember it. But if you don't have it written down, you may want to when you get to your homework. 15x squared minus 8x equal to 4. Don't shout out the answer. I will come around and ask for it here in a second. Have an answer. Let's see if we all match. Some of you are still working. Okay. We need a value and we need the number of roots that value is going to give us. Which one? Which one? Where you didn't write anything down for me yet. That is not. Nope. What'd you get? Okay. Which one? Oh, you're doing it over? Oh, this one? Yes, that sounds better. Yep, that's looking good. Ooh, we're getting on a roll. Which one? And our roll stopped. Make sure you have b squared minus 4 times a times c, and re-enter that. B squared minus 4 times a times c. Look at your c value. Uh-huh. have there? How many roots are we gonna have there? Write up the number of root, didn't square this. It's b squared. Okay, picking it back up. That double root. I checked yours already? Yep. How do we do over here? Okay. Alright. Alright. Nope. Let's see what we're doing. 4 times. Put that back in again and see, because you have everything in there correctly. Who over here was a no? You were a no? Punch it back in because, well, this needs to be b squared minus 4 times a times c, not just abc. All right, last row, and then I'll get back over there. Which one? No. B squared minus 4 times a times c. Punch that in left to right with parentheses. Your square has to be outside the parentheses. If you are squaring, you need to be parenthesis b, parenthesis square. If you put your square inside the parenthesis, you defeated the purpose of having parentheses. No. B squared minus 4 times 8. Look at your c value. Yep. Yep. Hey, who's over here that I still need a second look through? That looks better. Tell me how many roots you're having. Did we get it? That looks so much better when they're in the right order. 304? Make sure you put your parentheses all the way to the end. Let's try number 2 because that one didn't go so smoothly. So we're going to just try another one, see if this one can be perfected. So 304 comma 2 roots. That's what you needed, along with your little steps. For this one, I will write out what I would expect you to have on your paper for me to grade here. So x squared minus 2x minus 35 equals 0. They were nice to you on this one. They were nice. Don't have to write it in standard form. It's already there. Your job today is not to find answers. Your job today is to find a part. So like my son's car, it's a 1990, bless you, 1990 convertible LeBaron. You know how difficult it is to find parts on a 30-plus-year-old car? Very difficult. So he has 2 tires we need to find. Yeah, those aren't just common tires. You don't get to go just to Discount Tire and say, hey, I need 2 new front tires. No, Discount Tire goes, yeah, we don't carry those anymore, like 20 years ago. Let me call around and, eventually we might have tires for the car. Otherwise, same thing here. It's a part. It's a piece. It's a vital piece. You can't run a car without 2 front tires, right? You cannot run the quadratic formula without the discriminant. So, b squared. Hopefully you have negative 2 and you squared it. And then you're going to subtract that by 4 times a times c. First step I want to see is what you substituted in. Second step I want to see is what you got. You don't have to tell me that that's 4 plus. You just need to tell me what the answer is. So when you brought that from left to right and entered it, what'd you get? 144? We all agree? 144? And then I want you to tell me how many roots am I going to have? 2. Positive is 2. Negative is 0. So, yeah, you could say 0 roots or no roots. And 0 is 1. There you go. That's what I need from you today. You think you can handle 2 lines? Yeah. 3 things and a comma? So, that's it. Homework's going to be on a worksheet today, 1 to 24. Your job is to not read the directions. It's to find the discriminant on everything. And once you do that, your job will be done. Let's see if we can get that done here.